Tonight at 10, a highly critical report into lockdown parties at number 10. Boris Johnson says he will not resign.
Do you stand by everything you've told MPs before?
He and top officials are accused of repeated failures of leadership and behaviour that falls well short of the highest standards expected. The long-awaited report by a senior civil servant says many of the gatherings should not have been allowed and that staff who raised concerns were not treated with respect.
Sue Gray's report has emphasised that it is up to the political leadership in number 10 to take ultimate responsibility, and of course I do.
It provides definitive proof of how those within the building treated the sacrifices of the British people with utter contempt.
We'll have more details of the Partygate report and the government's attempts to move forward with its own agenda as early as tomorrow. There's to be a new package of support for households facing sharply rising fuel bills. After the latest mass shooting in America, 19 school children and 2 teachers are dead, and the president begs for change to the gun laws.
When in God's name will we do what needs to be done to, if not completely stop, fundamentally change the amount of the carnage that goes on in this country?
And the great Mo Salah says he will be staying at Anfield next season, but the longer term is far less certain.
And coming up in the sports on the BBC News Channel, Emma Raducanu's Roland Garros run is over at the second round. We'll bring you up to date with all the action from the French Open.
Good evening. Boris Johnson says he has no intention of stepping down as Prime Minister, despite a highly critical official report on lockdown parties in Downing Street, which concludes that he and top officials were guilty of repeated failures of leadership. The long-awaited report by the senior civil servant Sue Gray found that many of the gatherings should not have been allowed to happen and that staff who raised concerns were not treated with respect. Now, Boris Johnson admitted that mistakes had been made and he said that he took full responsibility. Labour says that the report is a catalogue of criminality and proof of the contempt within Downing Street for the millions who suffered during the pandemic. First tonight, this report by our political editor, Chris Mason.
It was the week before Christmas this investigation began. Today, its verdict delivered. 37 pages and 9 photos. And here it is, at party after party, when of course parties were banned, we read about wine and cheese, beer and pizza. On pages 15 and 16, an event with a karaoke machine, excessive alcohol consumption, one person being sick, a minor altercation, a fight between 2 people, people leaving in the middle of the night. And on page 13, a reference to that do where people were encouraged to bring their own booze. The day after, a senior official says, "We seem to have got away with it." Sue Gray concludes there were events that should not have been allowed to happen. She puts blame on senior leadership at the centre, who must bear responsibility for this culture. Since her earlier report in January, she accepts progress is being made in addressing the issues raised, but that we, the public, have the right to expect the highest standards of behaviour, and what happened fell well short of this. She makes one final observation, that it's her firm belief that these events did not reflect the prevailing culture in government at the time. The Prime Minister had a few hours to digest what the report said this morning before addressing MPs at lunchtime.
I take full responsibility for everything that took place on my watch. Sue Gray's report has emphasised that it is up to the political leadership in number 10 to take ultimate responsibility, and of course I do.
Sue Gray investigated 16 events. The police looked at 12. Fines were issued at 8 of them. The Prime Minister showed up at 9 of them. For the first time, we have pictures published today of the one both he and the Chancellor were fined for, a mid-afternoon gathering to mark Mr Johnson's birthday in June 2020. The report also includes these images from a leaving do. The Prime Minister said turning up at events like this was an important part of his job.
I briefly attended such gatherings to thank them for their service, which I believe is one of the essential duties of leadership.
Sue Gray was also told of multiple examples of officials being dismissive and rude towards some of the Number 10 staff.
Frankly, Mr Speaker, I have been appalled by some of the behaviour, particularly in the treatment of the security and the cleaning staff. And I would like to apologise to those members of staff.
And he insisted he'd changed his team and how they work and wanted to get on with governing.
I am confident with the changes and new structures that are now in place, that we are humbled by the experience and we have learned our lesson.
Labour's leader himself, alongside his deputy, currently under police investigation for breaking COVID rules, repeated that Boris Johnson must resign.
It's time to pack his bags. Only then can the government function again. Only then can the rot be carved out. Only then can we restore the dignity of that great office and the democracy that it represents.
And other party leaders also focused on the Prime Minister's character.
Truthfulness, honesty and transparency do not enter his vocabulary. It is just not part of his way of being, and it speaks for the type of man that he is.
Can the Prime Minister look the British people in the eye and name one person, just one person, he cares about more than himself?
And this Conservative critic of Mr Johnson posed this thought for fellow Tory MPs.
The question I humbly put to my colleagues is, are you willing, day in and day out, to defend this behaviour publicly?
Some did respond by saying yes. From the Commons, it was back to Downing Street for the Prime Minister and questions from reporters. Talk to our viewer, convince our viewer that you're not tempted or willing to lie to get out of a tight spot.
I just say to that person, look, I've tried to explain as clearly as I can what happened. I believe that they were work events. They were part of my job, and that view appears to be substantiated by the fact that I wasn't fined.
Tonight, Boris Johnson was back in Parliament facing Conservative MPs in private. It is they who have the power to decide whether he stays or goes. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
We'll be talking to Chris in just a few moments, but as he was telling us, the Gray report provides new details about the culture that prevailed in Downing Street, allowing drinking till the early hours and a sense of getting away with it, which was expressed in one message between staff. But the Sue Gray report also has some notable gaps. She decided it was inappropriate to investigate any further after the police investigation got underway in January. Our Home Editor, Mark Easton, has been considering what the report tells us about the culture of Boris Johnson's Downing Street.
The door of number 10 Downing Street, a black and white statement of the dignity, authority and integrity of those who occupy this most famous address. The staircase adorned with formal pictures of the great public figures who've resided here. But now another set of pictures have emerged from behind the black door, illustrating a culture of rule-breaking, drinking, rowdiness and rudeness in the building that represents the United Kingdom to many around the world. The 9 published images taken by an official government photographer are just a fraction of the hundreds of pictures seen by Sue Gray's inquiry team. It's what's not in today's report that poses as many questions as what is. For example, a gathering took place in the Prime Minister's flat, seen here when Theresa May was PM, but Sue Gray didn't investigate that event, nor other gatherings that her team hadn't already looked at before the Scotland Yard investigation.
I have taken the view that it would not be necessary, appropriate or proportionate to undertake any further investigation work following the conclusion of the work of the Metropolitan Police.
In other words, the police investigation didn't just pause Sue Gray's inquiry, it stopped it in its tracks. Scotland Yard hasn't said why some individuals and not others were fined for attending gatherings in Downing Street and Whitehall, which means that the public's understanding of what went on in this affair remains far from complete. We do know that just before Christmas in 2020, at one of the weekly Wine Time Friday events organised by the Downing Street press office during lockdown, someone accidentally triggered a panic alarm and a police officer on door duty raced to see what was happening. He found a crowded and noisy event with 15 to 20 people eating and drinking, some excessively. It appears a clear breach of the COVID rules, but the officer apparently took no action. Brian Paddock, a former senior Metropolitan Police officer, is threatening legal action to force Scotland Yard to explain their approach to rule-breaking in Downing Street.
Did they not investigate this properly because they didn't want to upset the Prime Minister? Now, without an explanation or without further investigation, that accusation still hangs in the air.
Talking to BBC Panorama, some junior staff working in Number 10 spoke of how the culture of defying lockdown rules came from the top.
You and your colleagues felt that you had essentially permission from Boris Johnson.
Yeah. You know, he wasn't there saying this shouldn't be happening. He wasn't saying, can everyone break up and go home?
Does any of this really matter so many months later? Number 10 wants to move on. But with trust in government and the Prime Minister in desperate need of repair, the unanswered questions make it much harder to restore the public's faith that those who make the rules won't break the rules. Mark Easton, BBC News.
Well, let's go live to Downing Street tonight. Our political editor, Chris Mason, is there. Chris, it was a very long wait for this report. We understand the Prime Minister has been talking to his own MPs this evening. How do you assess his situation?
Yes, hello Huw. We've been waiting for the best part of 6 months for this day, and yes, the Prime Minister meeting some of his MPs in private this evening, trying to reassure them and apologising once again. Remember, Conservative MPs are the most important electorate of all as far as Boris Johnson is concerned, because they have the power to remove him. Today, a 17th Conservative MP publicly said that he should stand down. Others have said it privately. There would need to be 54 in order for there to be a vote of confidence, and far more than that to topple him. My reading of the mood amongst Conservative MPs tonight is that I'm not sure today has radically changed all that many views, and that's something that people behind that door are reassured about. They acknowledge it could perhaps have been worse today, even though it was deeply, deeply uncomfortable for so many Tory MPs. The aim now from the government is to change the record and change it quickly. They are desperate to talk about something, anything else. And to give you a sense of that, Huw, I was getting texts whilst I was still in the Prime Minister's press conference this afternoon, talking about the announcement that they will make tomorrow. Tomorrow, how convenient in changing that record.
Chris, many thanks. Once again, Chris Mason there, our political editor. And on that very theme, the government is set to announce, as early as tomorrow, new support for households hit by rising energy prices. The package of measures is thought to amount to at least £10 billion. Let's get more details. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is with me. What do we know, Simon?
Well, I think it's worth reflecting first, Huw, just how steep, how crushing these energy bill rises have been. If you look here at the history of the price cap since it was instituted, you can see pretty stable for a while. Then in April, up to nearly £2,000. And then we heard from Ofgem the other day, come October, nearly £3,000. So it's more than doubled in a year. Now, earlier this year, the Chancellor announced support worth about £9 billion, just over £9 billion. And that came from a £150 council tax rebate for most households and £200 off everyone's bills, but repayable over the next 5 years. So tomorrow, we're expecting a bigger rise and a bigger package, at least £10 billion. Now, up to now, the language has been it's going to be much more targeted, things like the warm home discount, the winter fuel allowance. But in a shift of policy that's been coming through the last few days and has emerged in the last few hours, we could expect something much more universal. That £200 repayable loan on bills I'm told, first reported in the Times, but I'm told it's pretty solid, could be turned into a grant and perhaps increased, even doubled. So although there will be extra help for people on low and fixed incomes like pensioners, I think the fact when Ofgem said 12 million households could find themselves in fuel poverty, that sort of triggered an instinct we need something more universal, and we could see that tomorrow. But it's worth saying that given the steep rise that we've seen, even this £19 billion is about half what the actual damage has been through these bills. So for anyone, even with this package, it's going to be a very difficult winter.
Simon, we'll talk again tomorrow, no doubt. Thank you very much. Simon Jack, our business editor. Now, within the past hour, President Biden has pleaded for support for reforms to gun laws to make a fundamental impact on gun crime in America. At least 19 primary school children, along with 2 teachers, are now confirmed dead after yesterday's attack in Uvalde in southern Texas, and the youngest victim there was just 7 years old. And there are more details about the 18-year-old gunman. Police say that he did not have a criminal record, or they say a history of mental health problems. Our North America editor, Sarah Smith, has the latest.
The heartbreak is painfully apparent for parents, families and neighbours. It must be the worst news anyone can hear. Young children killed in their own classroom. As the police responded to the shooting, parents had to wait to discover if their children had survived or been shot dead. These are the faces of some of the young victims. Javier Lopez was 10 years old, as was Ellie Garcia, and Amory Joe, also 10. Eva Miralis was one of the 2 teachers killed. Children from other classrooms were evacuated by police while the shooter was still inside. Luque Lupa's 8-year-old son was unharmed and doesn't understand what happened in his school yesterday. Your son doesn't know that there was a shooting in the school?
He's just acting like a regular day at school. I mean, a regular kid.
How are you going to tell him what happened in the school yesterday?
Well, only time, when time comes.
Have friends of his been killed?
Yes.
You'll have to tell him that as well.
Yes.
It'll be heartbreaking for you as well as for him.
Exactly.
The gunman, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos, lived locally. Police have no idea why he did this or if it was pre-planned. He crashed his car outside the school, emerged wearing body armour and carrying a semi-automatic rifle.
Unfortunately, the suspect managed to get inside one of the classrooms and barricade himself, where he started to shoot not only at officers that were responding, but also inside the classroom.
All 21 victims have now been identified and their remains removed from the school. What happened here in Uvalde has reignited a nationwide debate about gun control and why powerful military-style assault weapons are so readily available in places like Texas. But the political response has just served to illustrate how deeply divided America is over guns. Gun ownership is common and widespread in Texas, but questions are being asked about why an 18-year-old needs access to a military-style rifle.
The idea that an 18-year-old can walk into a store and buy weapons of war designed and marketed to kill is, I think, just wrong. It just violates common sense.
The police are working to try to establish a motive for this shocking crime. The local community will never understand why this had to happen here. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Uvalde, Texas.
Columbine, Parkland, Sandy Hook, now Uvalde, the latest name in the list of school shootings in America. As Sarah was telling us, there have been repeated calls to tighten restrictions on gun ownership, but the USA is as divided as ever, it seems, about the stated right to bear arms. Our correspondent, John Sudworth, reports now from Sandy Hook in Connecticut, where a decade ago, 20 children and 6 adults were killed in a mass shooting at a primary school.
The flag's at half-mast, a gesture of empathy from one town, one of so many scarred by the tragedy of gun violence. But there's despair here too. Almost a decade ago, 6-year-old Dylan Hockley was murdered in his school along with 25 others. His mum, Nicole, set up the Sandy Hook Promise Foundation, With little hope of gun control, it focuses on trying to help schools identify potential killers in advance.
Your thoughts and prayers are meaningless unless there's something substantive behind it that backs it up. And a lot of these politicians, they can do all the thoughts and prayers in the world, but then they don't take any action whatsoever. So their words are meaningless. If you can't act on it, it doesn't matter.
The recurrence of school shootings has left no shortage of national despair too.
The problem which came to the awful conclusion you face here is a demon we have to do more to fight.
Our nation is shocked and saddened by the news of the shootings at Virginia Tech today.
Since I've been president, this is the fourth time we have come together to comfort a grieving community torn apart by mass shooting.
As a nation, we have to ask, when in God's name are we going to stand up to the gun lobby?
But the outrage hasn't affected gun sales. 42% of adult Americans own a gun or live with someone who does. And they're buying more. Last year, almost 20 million were sold. On average, there are now more than 100 gun deaths a day in America. And although mass shootings account for a tiny fraction of the total, from Sandy Hook to Columbine to Virginia Tech, they are seared into this country's consciousness. But with each one, it is not change that appears increasingly inevitable, but the lack of it. While President Biden was urging more regulation, others were defending lawful gun rights.
You see Democrats and a lot of folks in the media whose immediate solution is to try to restrict the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens. That doesn't work. It's not effective. It doesn't prevent crime. We know what does prevent crime, which is going after felons and fugitives and those with serious mental illness.
On the fire station roof, there's a star for each school child or staff member killed here. We can't tolerate this anymore, President Obama said then. But 10 years on, a solution seems as far away as ever. John Sudworth, BBC News, Sandy Hook.
Let's go live to Uvalde, and our North America editor, Sarah Smith, joins us now. Sarah, is there any sign, do you think, in Congress that there is any movement possible on the attitude to changing the law on gun crime?
Well, they're talking about it, and they're talking across the aisle between both political parties about it, but even the Democrats who desperately want to pass gun legislation to restrict access to gun ownership, something they have been trying and failing to do for years and years. Even the people who most want to see this say it's not going to happen anytime soon, and that trying to rush it will not make it occur. The problem is, of course, that despite the huge reaction provoked by the murder of 19 young children here, despite the impassioned, emotional pleas from President Biden and politicians right across the spectrum, there just isn't any agreement about what to do over gun ownership, how to restrict people's ability to buy, for instance, powerful assault weapons. And unless both parties can come to some kind of accommodation, it's just not possible to pass any laws that would change the situation here in America. And as you listen to the political debate, with both sides accusing each other of politicizing what's happened here in Uvalde, of trying to score political points, you can see how deeply entrenched the divisions over this issue are, and therefore how extremely unlikely it is that yet another tragedy here is actually going to provoke any kind of change.
Sarah, many thanks again. Sarah Smith, our North America editor in Uvalde. Back in the UK, a woman who murdered a baby boy that she wanted to adopt has been jailed for at least 18 years. Laura Castle, who was 38, told Preston Crown Court that she'd lost her mind and shook the 13-month-old Layla James Corkill at her home in Barrow in Cumbria in January last year. The supermodel Kate Moss has given evidence today in the defamation case between actors Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. She told the court via video link from Gloucestershire that she'd never been pushed down the stairs by the actor, a rumour which had been referred to by Miss Heard, his former wife. Mr Depp is suing Miss Heard following an article in which she said he was violent, and she is countersuing. Closing arguments are expected on Friday. Our correspondent David Silito has been following the case.
Would you please state your full name for the record?
Kate Moss.
Kate Moss testifying by video in what is week 6 of this libel case between Johnny Depp and his former wife Amber Heard. And the reason? To address a rumour mentioned by Amber Heard that Kate Moss had been pushed down some stairs during a holiday in Jamaica when she and Johnny Depp were a couple.
What, if anything, happened when you were in Jamaica with Mr. Depp?
We were leaving the room and Johnny left the room before I did, and there had been a rainstorm, and as I left the room I slid down the stairs and I hurt my back.
Did Mr. Depp push you in any way down the stairs?
No.
During the course of your relationship, did he ever push you down any stairs?
No, he never pushed me, kicked me, or threw me down any stairs.
Johnny Depp then returned to the witness stand to himself address Amber Heard's allegations. One of the questions about his alleged drug use.
Have you ever consumed 8 to 10 MDMA pills at once?
No, ma'am. No, I have not.
And why is that?
Because I'd be dead. I'm pretty sure I'd be dead.
Final arguments are scheduled for Friday. David Silito, BBC News, Fairfax, Virginia.
The broadcaster Dame Deborah James has visited the Chelsea Flower Show to see the rose that's named after her. The 40-year-old host of You, Me and the Big C podcast revealed earlier this month that she is receiving end-of-life care after being diagnosed with bowel cancer back in 2016. More than £6 million has now been raised for Dame Deborah's Bowel Babe Fund. Mohamed Salah, the Premier League's joint top scorer, one of the world's biggest football stars, has announced that he will play for Liverpool again next season. The striker gave his club the timely boost as they prepared to face Real Madrid in Paris on Saturday, looking to win a second Champions League trophy in 4 years. And here's what he had to say.
I'm just focused with the team. I want to win the Champions League again. I want to see Hendo having the trophy again in his hand and hopefully give it to me after. I'm just focused with the team, really. I don't want to talk about the contract now because it's like we have a long time. I'm staying next season for sure.
Mo Salah speaking today. More now on the main story tonight, the publication of the official report into lockdown parties in Downing Street. Now that more details are in the open, some Conservative MPs will be watching closely to see what impact that all of this might have on the public mood. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth has been to Esher in Surrey, a traditional Conservative constituency, which the Lib Dems are busily targeting in readiness for the next election.
On a drizzly day in a small Surrey village, the Piglets Play Centre's something of a haven for parents and grandparents. Among the diggers and dinosaurs, there's talk too of the political fallout from events in Westminster, and owner Tamsin is furious.
It's absolutely appalling. I think the hypocrisy, the injustice to those that have had to watch their parents die without anybody there. There's no humanity about it. There's nothing right about it whatsoever.
Husband and wife Graham and Jean are long-term Tory voters, but lockdown parties in Downing Street have split their opinion of Boris Johnson.
I think there's been made too much of it. I think what they should be concentrating on is the financial situation of the country at the moment. OK, if there's a drinking culture in number 10, that should be dealt with. But it's been overblown. I think he's done a good job so far.
Well, we've got differing views. I'm for him. I'm still with him. But it was just that was so disappointing that government could do that at a time when the country was in crisis. I just don't think that was right or fair.
This constituency's been Conservative for decades, but the Lib Dems have been increasingly prominent here. MPs in seats like this, facing a challenge from opposition parties, will be paying particular attention to the public mood. At the Moondrop Cafe, the Prime Minister's statement provided the backdrop to the lunchtime trade. James, stopping for a bite to eat, was interested in the detail of today's report, but he'd already made up his mind.
This is what's happened. I mean, if you show me him partying 10 more times, I'm like, well, we know he's done that now. So if he had been upfront about it, I think You could have had a little bit more sympathy around it, but definitely damaged him, definitely damaged the Conservative Party.
For some here, new details will matter. Others will have formed a view, like Brenda, who stopped to talk from her front garden.
I think integrity really matters. That matters to the children we're bringing through, the next generation, and I worry at the moment that the leadership does not appear to have that. And the Sue Gray report is just one little item of lots of things that aren't right.
Downing Street might hope this is blowing over, keen to move on, but the question for many will be, what damage has already been done? Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Surrey.
And that's it from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.